What's up, Disney Nuts here. How you guys doing? So today I want to do a different type of video for you guys, mostly dedicated for my photographer friends. A while back I posted a video of the night of a million lights, which was recorded at Give Kids the World, and I wanted to share the tips and tricks that I use to be able to take those shots. So today we're going to be walking around here at Hollywood Studios showing you a couple of things, and I'll be talking about the lens, camera settings, and all the other good stuff that I did to be able to get those shots. And then at the end we'll go home and edit those photos, one or two, so you can see exactly what I did.
Hello! Thank you. I designed myself. Merry Christmas, everyone! So good to see you all.
For starters, obviously the camera is the Canon 80D, the only camera that I have. Now for the lens, I went with my f2.8 Sigma, and the reason for that was that I wanted a lens that I was able to zoom in and zoom out, because there's a technique that I use to be able to make sure everything's in focus. So we'll talk about that later. But if you want to go ahead and use any of the other lenses, then that's fine by you, like the Nifty 50 and stuff like that. But I wanted to use the 2.8 because it has the ability to zoom in and out, and that way I could adjust the focus exactly as I wanted to. I could have gone with the ultra wide angle, but I don't know, I just wanted the f2.8. It has a wider aperture, lets in more light, and allows me to shutter the shutter speed a little faster than I normally do. So when it comes to photos like this, like behind me, I'll use the tripod, but in the case of these lights that were flashing off of the houses so bright, I did not need to use it. And there was a couple reasons why I also didn't bring it. I was with the family, so we had to be traveling fast, so I had to move around fast, so I left it. Camera settings, for this type of shot, we're going to go in with manual mode, and what I like to put is on usually 1/80th of a second, and the reason for that is to try to minimize the shake as much as possible. And then for the f-stop, I'm going to put it as wide as possible. Like I said, I'm using the f2.8, so 2.8 is what I'll be using on the aperture setting. As for ISO, I'm going to leave it as automatic. So important thing that you have to set your camera to is to partial metering, and the reason for that is that we don't want the camera to try to adjust for the whole image. We want to make sure it focuses only on the center of the image, which is most of where the light's going to be coming from. Now of course we're taking shots which has the whole house, but sometimes if you're taking a wider shot, you don't want it to try to compute what's on the outside that doesn't have any lights. Now if your camera doesn't have partial metering, it's okay. You can actually use spot metering, which is basically the little center dot that you're going to be using to adjust for the camera to adjust itself. And basically the difference of the spot and partial metering is that partial actually covers like an 8% when the spot covers just the 3% in the middle of the frame. When it comes to the autofocus modes, we want to make sure we select something that's in the center of the frame. Now most of these cameras have like a bunch of focus points, but we want to make sure we gather them basically only into the center. In my case, I'm using the zone, and I'm selecting only the center zone, because that way when I zoom in and focus, I only focus on the dots, in this case the light that's in the middle of the frame. Now, if you're wondering probably where I'm at, I'm actually at the Animal Kingdom Lodge here taking photos of these beautiful tree here that they have. And this is probably one of the coolest trees that they have on property, to be honest with you. A little photographer disclaimer. These are the settings that I use for my types of photos. Now, probably there's 100 ways to take other settings for these type of photos, but these are the ones that I found to work. And I'm just sharing with you guys, and hopefully you can use them and use that as a base and adjust it accordingly to your equipment and photos that you are taking. Focus modes, I actually use the one shot. And what I do is something that I learned a while back in my audiovisual days of high school, is where you zoom in, focus, and then zoom out. Now, technically speaking, these lenses aren't made for that. Supposedly they lose the focus when you zoom out. I found that with this lens, it actually works pretty fine. So that's what I do. I'll zoom in all the way, press the shutter speed halfway, let it focus, and then zoom out, and then take the photo. Now, I will take a couple photos just to be sure, and that way I make sure that everything comes out in perfect focus. Okay, it's needless to say that make sure you're shooting in RAW format on your photos, because since some of the photos are probably going to be a little bit darker than what you usually expected, having to shoot these files in that format allows us to bring out the colors and bring up the exposure without getting too much noise on the photos. If we shoot in JPEG, what's going to happen is it's not going to be able to pull out the information from the photo as easily as it would for a raw file. Now, I know the raw files are big and and all that stuff, but for stuff like this, you really do need to shoot in raw format. Okay, so let me show you a couple of photos that we took that night, the before and after. Here is the before. As you can see, a raw format. It looks a little underexposed, but since I'm using the center of the image, it looks like it exposed it correctly. Now, here's another one. You can see, everything looks good, nice and sharp, which is what I like. And here's the third one. Now, when we go to the edited ones, I'm going to show you how you can see how much I had to bring up the exposure, and that is where shooting in a raw format comes in handy, because you can actually bring the exposure up and you won't bring in all that noise and stuff like that. So if you try to do this in JPEG, when you try to bring up the exposure like this, you would probably get a bunch of noise. Here's the before, here's the after, here's the before, here's the after, here's the before, and here's the after. Now, I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm basically just adjusting the lens setting, which is why you see how it's somewhat the corners curve out. So that's just doing the lens correction, and then basically a couple settings here, nothing fancy. And I'm not doing anything on the colors or anything down here, and look how good the shot looks. Okay, so there you go. Okay guys, so that's it here from Animal Kingdom Lodge. Hopefully this answers your question of how to shoot those photos like I did at Give Kids the World Night of a Million Lights. Now, the event's still going on, so make sure you go ahead and check it out, and just get your tickets online. I'm going to put a link underneath on the description. It's a great event to go to for a great cause, so make sure you go over there and check it out, and take your camera, take some photos, and tag me to see how they came out. Okay guys, until then, stay awesome, stay safe, see ya, bye.